At this time, we're going to have each of the kids and Debbie and myself speak to you a little bit about what they experienced at Resurrection. We're really blessed because we had kids doing all kinds of different things. Some of us were in the sessions the whole time. We had Jacob and Andrew and also Emma Dietz, who's not here this morning. They are CCYM reps, and so they were doing things a little bit different from what we were and involved in a couple of different things. And so it's really a chance to really hear about all the different facets to Resurrection. Our theme this year, as is printed in the bulletin there, was a work in progress. And as you're listening to it, you'll be able to see some of our pictures from here, and the pictures are not in any particular order, so we weren't playing pool in the middle of the sessions or anything like that, even though it looks like that on the pictures, I promise.
All right. So, hello, my name is Jacob Goodman, and I'm the CCYM president, and I found out that is a lot harder than it sounds. So, I'm going to go way back to not even to Resurrection. This is at the meeting planning for Resurrection. So, Andrew and this kid, Braden, have this good idea, because it's Resurrection and we want to have some fun, to get a T-shirt slingshot.
Well, I wanted a T-shirt cannon.
Yeah, we wanted a T-shirt cannon, but they vetoed that. And so we decided to get a T-shirt slingshot, and we got it. And when we got to Resurrection, we decided to practice shooting it. So me and Braden are holding the slingshot. Andrew here apparently doesn't know how to aim. He pulls it all the way back. He's on the ground. When he lets it go, this thing goes soaring, flying through the air, and hits one of the lights on the ceiling. That thing hit so hard. Yeah, and the guy who was in charge of the place, not the Resurrection crew, but the LeConte Center crew, was in there when we hit the light. And we looked at Laura. Laura is our CCYM delegate lady. She's the head of CCYM. And we looked at her because we thought we were going to get yelled at, because at this point we hit a light. She said, well, that's what practice is for. And I was happy about that. And then, so we also had the other bright idea. I'm supposed to, since I'm the president, I have all this, I would think, responsibility. But, I like to have a little fun. So with this slingshot, it came all, together. And in the bag, when we opened it up, were some water balloons. So I had the bright idea between sessions to fill up a water balloon with you can fill up a water balloon with a water bottle. You just put the water balloon on it and then squeeze the water bottle and it will blow it up. I didn't know that. I figured it out though. And so I tied that off and everything. And I'm walking around 30 minutes with this water balloon in my pocket trying to find a spot where we can shoot it off at. And we found a spot. And so, yeah, it was outside. It wasn't inside. And so Andrew I'm holding it up, and then Braden is holding the other side. And Andrew shoots it off, and it doesn't go. It just busts.
It explodes in the slingshot.
And it covers everyone. So we walk back into the session soaked. It wasn't even raining or anything. And we're carrying the slingshot. And Laura looks at us, and she knows. She knows we did something. And she just shook her head. And that's our little fun that we had. And then, being CCYM president, you got to be there early on Friday. And being early on Friday, that means you have to help set up everything, backdrops and stuff like that for other people. And we went to the youth leader lounge, and this thing, whoever made this, gosh help them, because this thing is it curves like this and then curves back around like that.
Probably from the piano to that.
It's the length of the altar and curves and stuff. You gotta set it up and everything. It's weird, and then there's magnets to keep it together. So I didn't understand how to do that, but we got it up and everything, and we made a friend. We actually made lots of friends. I liked the speaker; she was pretty good. And you also find out when you're CCYM president, people ask you a bunch of questions that you don't know the answer to. So you just gotta like make up answers and stuff. And when you say the wrong answer, and then you learn not to make up answers anymore. And I had a great time, and that's how my CCYM and Resurrection experience went. Oh, okay. So, you know how I set up all these backdrops. I was just waiting for my backdrop to show up for my CCYM table, because when you're CCYM president, you have to design the table and everything, and I had it perfectly designed. We made pamphlets and everything. I brought my TV over and plugged up a bunch of videos to it that on the screen, and then we're going to have this awesome backdrop. Well, the snow hit, and it got delayed. And then, so we're sitting there waiting, and then we got a call that said that they can't deliver to businesses, because it was going to be delivered to the conference office. And they said we cannot deliver on weekends to businesses. So my backdrop never came, and I was a little upset, but the table still looked good. All right. And that's all I have.
Where'd you put those federation cards? It's okay. I don't need them. Well, I kind of do need them. Okay, hi, my name's Andrew Goodman. Yeah, last year they got mad at me for talking about food, so I actually have to talk about resurrection and stuff this year. So, there was this event, or like, they talked about this event in one of the booths back in the little, what would you call that area? The vendor space. And it's called Adoration. And Adoration is an event held at ETSU in October, and they're trying to get 1,000 churches together to worship the Lord together and unite the body of Christ as one. And while they're there, they're going to hit upon prescription drug abuse in Southwest Virginia, because we have one of the highest like percentages of drug abuse like in the whole entire country. And so what you have to do is I have little pamphlet things, and if you want to go to their website, it's on the back, and it explains a little more about it. And yeah, so this year's resurrection theme was a work in progress. So the adoration kind of ties into it, because you're helping the community they're a work in progress to bring them back to Christ from their abuse. And the speaker this year knew who she was talking to. Like, her audience, she was talking directly to the teens and like the points that she was bringing up. So like, I know personally a couple of the things she said like happened to me, and like I knew like what she was talking about. And this year we got a cabin. Cabin was pretty fun. I got 6 hours of sleep the whole weekend. Yeah, I also learned that I'm not very good at pool, so if you ever want to beat someone in pool, play me. But if you really want to know about adoration, I have these. If you want to come see me, I'll give you one. You can check them out. Whoever's next.
So, the cabin was great and all, but one of the stories that the speaker told really got to me, and it was about her training for a marathon. And when she was running the marathon, the first 5 miles was easy, first 10 still easy, 15 easy. But when she got to the 20th, she heard sirens. And when she went up a hill, and when she was going down, she saw police cars and lights. So when she got to the bottom, they escorted her off, and she really did not like that. But the whole sum of it is that God will not leave you 20 miles on a 28-mile race. He will not leave you for anything, because he loves us. And he loves us, and so we are a work in progress. He will always love us. That's the main gist. She also talked about there was a video about how people describe themselves versus how other people describe themselves. And everybody described themselves worse than what they actually look like. And that video is just like, made like some people cry. It was emotional. That's basically all I had to say.
Hello. My name is Jamie Turner, and I learned two big things at Resurrection this year. I learned that we're all a big work in progress, or a project of God's, and I learned that while I really enjoy playing pool, I am not good at it at all. But I couldn't really pick a certain story of hers to talk about. It's just the general idea that nobody is perfect and we're all a work in progress. It really got to me. It got me thinking about just general stuff, and I'd just like for you to know that if you think badly of yourself, don't. You're amazing, and all of you and your family are amazing. Nobody's perfect. Nobody ever will be perfect. And that's what I really learned from Resurrection. So that's all I have.
Hi, my name is Andrew, and this was my third year at Resurrection. And there's a lot of stuff I could talk about, but I don't have enough time. So, like Jamie said, it's hard to pick out just one story to talk about because she had many different stories that touched most everybody. You could especially tell that during the altar call when several people went up there, and she was talking about getting a full-time call in the ministry, and you'd be surprised by how many kids, 6th grade and up, wanted to become or get a part in full-time ministry. And it really touches your heart when you look at something like that. And I did observe something that she was saying a lot, and I think that she stressed, like I said, she did stress a lot about going into ministry, and she also stressed a lot about women's rights. She said that in like every single message. That didn't really bother me, but that's just something she said a lot. And we did get a cabin this year, and that was really nice. It was a really good cabin, and we saved a lot of money on it. I think we all learned we're bad at pool. I mean, that's what everybody's been saying. But other than that, I had a really good time listening to the songs. The songs all had great messages. I think, they're upbeat, and they have a good, catchy tune, and that's why people listen to it. But the lyrics are really touching, and all the messages were really touching. But that's all I really have to say about Resurrection.
Okay, well, one thing none of them mentioned was the speaker's name. Her name is Rachel Billups. She's a pastor at a church in Ohio. And as Andrew said, she really did know her audience. I mean, Resurrection is for the students, it's for the teenagers, but the adults really can take something away from it as well. If you look through my notes, I've got 4 pages front and back of just notes that I kept scribbling throughout it. And I know Debbie's going to touch on a couple of things that she spoke about, so I'm only going to talk about a couple. To begin with, one of her things, she really just hammered home that work in progress message, because that's exactly what we all are. And I know when I was beginning my journey, I kind of always felt like, well, I can't really disciple to anybody because, I'm still reading the Bible, I'm still working my way through reading the Bible, I'm still doing this, I don't know this, I don't know that. That's not the point. It doesn't mean you can't disciple to somebody, because you certainly can. And as you learn and as you go through your journey, which is an everyday, always changing kind of thing, you can bring other people in to begin their journey as well. One thing she said that really stuck with me was faith is a lifetime of figuring it out. You don't just become a Christian and snap your fingers and, okay, you know everything there is to know about it. She talked briefly about when she was in college. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but she was part of a conference, and she was, there were, business members and business leaders and everything from her community, and she was the lonely college student in the room, the youngest person there. Everybody else is, successful. They're set in their careers and in their lives. And when they got to her and asked her opinion about something, she said, well, I'm just a college student, And one of them said, don't ever say that again. Said, you are not just a college student. You are a college student, but you are also you are also this and that. And said, don't ever say you are just somebody or that you are just something, because all of that factors into who you are. And saying just kind of is almost putting that implied apology into it. Sorry, I'm just a college student, or I'm, just a high school student, or whatever. That doesn't matter. Your input, you're still valuable. And you still need to have input into the situation and the scenario. On Saturday, in the afternoon session, she talked about, it was called Forgetting Your Identity. It was about Jacob and Esau. And, we all know that story. Jacob, or Esau ended up giving up his birthright to his brother Jacob. And so Esau just really kind of gave, if you really read the story, he just kind of gave it up. Just, I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, fine, here, take my birthright, I don't care, just give me something to eat. Jacob had made this great stew. And Esau really didn't put any emphasis on his birthright and how important that really, really was. And she said, and Jacob kind of knew that. He kind of took advantage of that situation. So she talked about our stew. We all have stew, not the hearty, beef stew with nice veggies and all that we really enjoy, but actual stew, things maybe we've done in our lives that we're not proud of, or we wish we could go back and change. We can't. We don't have time machines. But she said, everybody has some type of stew or something in their stew that they don't like. It said, really stop and think about what that is, and make sure that going forward, you don't eat the stew. If somebody's offering you that stew, don't eat it. Especially if you're tired, if you're fatigued, if you're feeling weak for some reason, because that's when you are your most vulnerable. And that's how Esau, lost his identity. She also talked about, at one point, I think it was on Saturday, Terry, we went to that kind of separate meeting. I think it was after the morning session, or during the morning session on Saturday. The youth leaders and pastors were all called to come to a separate meeting if they wished, and it was regarding ministry. And then on Sunday morning, she kind of tied into all of that. The purpose of that meeting was to provide some resources and tools for those leaders and pastors, because you end up with, especially with kids who answer the altar call, they answer a call to ministry, but they're trying to kind of revamp the way the conference handles those kinds of things, because in the past the push has always been to go toward ordained ministry. And they said, Tim Jones was the speaker about that, or the host for that session, and he said he had a student, I believe her name was Kate, and she came to Resurrection. She was one of his youth kids, always had a great time. She answered a call to ministry. And after Resurrection, in a few months, even a year after, he was, always on her, how's things going, da-da-da. Eventually lost touch, and said about 5 years after that, he ran into her. She was very successful in her life and her career. She's working for a nonprofit, doing great things. And he said, so how's things going? And at that point, she was essentially no longer even involved in church. So she went from having a call to come into ministry to basically not even attending church anymore, much less, continuing on in that ministry. And he realized that he was part of the problem, part of the reason that she was at that state, because he didn't continue to nurture and worship that call. And so they said there's all forms of ministry. Don't think about it like you have to go on and become an ordained minister. There's youth ministry, children's ministry, music ministry, lay ministry. There's all types out there. And and Rachel kind of talked about that. One thing she said was, if you're breathing, then you are called to preach God's word in some way, through your actions, through speaking to people. If you are drawing breath, you can get out there and preach it in your own unique way. The CCYM takes up the Youth Service Fund every year. This year, their goal was $33,000 to raise, and that's for the whole year, all of 2018. It was taken up during the first session on Saturday. They count it during the break, and then they report to us on Saturday evening what the amount was that they raised. And this year, just at Resurrection, they raised $17,853 and some change. And that's literally just a bunch of sand buckets from you take to the beach being passed around through both sessions to take up. So they're already, halfway toward their goal for this year. And they mentioned some of the things that were done in last year with, and I forget what they raised last year, but it was a little over the $30,000 mark. But a couple of the things they did with was most of, or at least half of that money from last year, 2017, went to helping to rebuild homes and businesses and things in the Gatlinburg area that had been destroyed by the fires. And it said that they, working with the Appalachian Service Project, they have already rebuilt 7 homes this past year that were lost in the fires. They've broken ground on 5 more, and their total goal is to rebuild 25 homes. So they're well on their way. Said they also were able to obtain and give out grants to churches to be able to help with clothing and other needs that people had who lost everything in the fires. And so they also just had a huge number of just people that showed up to do the work. Having the money is great, but you also have to have actual worker bees sometimes to actually do the work. So the kids mentioned we had a cabin this year. Yes, we did, much to everyone's delight. Part of the reason that they only got 6 hours of sleep over the weekend, some of them, is because they don't know when to go to bed. You stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning playing pool, not my fault. So it's not entirely because we worked them to death, trust me. They did work hard this weekend, and they had to be in places, and they're always really great about doing that, which is greatly appreciated by chaperones anywhere for any circumstance. But we really did have a great time. Not all of us are bad at pool, by the way. Some of us grew up with a pool table in their basement. Yeah, Jacob beat me one game. It was late. I was off my game. But having a cabin really does work out. We were blessed even before we left because Friday the leasing company called me and had to switch us to another cabin because the road was icy going up to the one we reserved. So for no extra cost, we got a much larger cabin that held about 4 more people. It was a very nice treat. We were very blessed to have that. So. But it really just works out very, very well, so we will continue to do that in the future. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has supported us with fundraisers and just flat-out donations, who's given us food and snacks, and you'd think we were never going to eat again the way we take snacks to Resurrection, but nobody went hungry, so that's the key thing. So Debbie will let Debbie have a few words here now.
Have you ever seen a child, or maybe even when you were young, put on a costume or some superhero pajamas or princess pajamas? Think about what they look like. They're tall, they pose, they go like this, they look in the mirror, they smile, they're just all over the place. They run through the house. They're just so proud. They smile because nobody's ever told them anything different. They really believe they're princesses and superheroes. Then you hit middle school, and then your world kind of changes. Abercrombie and Finch, there was a big to-do way back, and this was the CEO statement that he said, "In every school there are cool and popular kids, and then they're the not so cool and popular kids. He said candidly, we go after the cool kids. We go after the attractive, all-American kids with great attitudes and a lot of friends. A lot of people don't belong in our clothes, and they can't belong. We are exclusionary. Absolutely. Those companies that are in trouble are trying to target everybody, young, old, fat, skinny. But when you become totally vanilla, you don't alienate anybody, but you don't excite anybody either. Mike Jeffries really just verbalized about what most companies do to target young people. He got in big trouble and got fired, and everybody thinks he's horrible. But, you know, a lot of the companies do that. They target young people. They target only the cool people wear their certain clothes. Young people have to decide at that point whether to trust in God or to believe in the lies around them. That they have to try not to believe that they're not good enough just because they don't have the coolest clothes or not considered to be coolest kids. Peer pressure is real. But peer pressure sort of goes all the way back into Genesis, back with Sarah and Abraham. Sarah believed that she was not in favor with God. She was depressed because she could not give Abraham a child. She was not one of the cool kids. Well, she was an elderly lady. But you know, at that time, that was something that the women were to give their men children. And if they couldn't, then there was something wrong. Sarah couldn't see her potential. Just like the so-called not cool kids, she had to make a decision either to trust in God or to believe all the lies around her. She was not good enough to bear a child. Was she not even good enough to be a mother? God said to her, "Stop, because you are the beloved daughter of mine." Sarah was claimed by God, and with God, nothing is impossible. Absolutely nothing. As you know, she ended up having a baby. Abraham was like 100 plus, and she still had a baby because she trusted in God. How many of you looked in the mirror this morning and smiled? Smiled at yourself because you are a child of God. Most of us don't. You know, it goes back to the story that Daniel was talking about. If you can look up that video was awesome. How we perceive ourselves and how others perceive us. We are a child of God. Every morning we should wake up, look in the mirror and smile and love what we see because God created us. Another thing that she talked about was, do you know how to go public about Jesus and your Christian faith? Social media is out there. We know where people are going. We know what people are eating for dinner. We know when they're going to sleep. We know everything about their lives. But do they know about us and our Christian life? Do you know how to go public about Jesus? She told the story about working for ODOT. That's just like VDOT here. She was a pastor of a small church at the time, and she was also working for ODOT as, extra money. She was on an assignment, and she had to drive with a young man that she had never really driven before with. He was a very quiet man, unassuming, wasn't very fashionably dressed, long hair, kind of kept to himself. So she needed help gathering trash cans or whatever she was gathering, so her partner wasn't there, so she said, come on. So she traveled with this young man. Now, she was a pastor at a church, and so they were driving along, and she saw her church coming, and she got really excited, and she turned to the man, and she said, that's my church. That's my church. I go there. I pastor there. That's my church. And he just sat there quietly. One of those awkward pauses when you're having a conversation with somebody, it's just sort of quiet. And she said it again. That's my church. I'm a pastor there. I go there. And the young man doesn't say very much. Matter of fact, he didn't say anything the whole trip. And he looked at her, and she was so excited. She was waiting to see what he was going to say. And he looked over at her and he said, "Pastor?" And she said, yes, I'm a pastor over there at that church. That's my church. Then he delivered a stomach-wrenching punch. He said, "Pastor?" He said, "I didn't even know you were a Christian." It's time to go public with your faith. Many times we don't want to share our faith because we're afraid of what people might think of us. They may think we're hypocrites because we're not always perfect. Like she said, we're a work in progress. We have to remember that. We have to remember that all of the time, that we are a work in progress. We need to share the good, the bad, and the ugly, because there is somebody that feels that they are not good enough to be a child of God, and that is not true. People need to see both sides because they need to know, yes, you are for real. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, Paul is saying, preach the word. Many people feel like they're not good enough to preach the word. However, if you are breathing, then you are born a child of God and you are worthy to preach the word. Often when someone has a problem, what do we say? Oh, we'll pray for you. Oh, I'll be praying for you. Then what happens? We're so busy. Our lives are so busy. The week goes on. Maybe you'll pray for them later in the week. Maybe you forget because you're just so busy during the week. Why not let's say, let me pray for you right now. And you stop at that minute and you pray with them right then. Now, I don't know if you feel like me, that's not something that I'm very comfortable with right now. I think sometimes that maybe my prayer wouldn't be good enough or not eloquent enough. But we have to practice. We have to practice. If you play a sport, you have to prepare, right? You practice out of season, in season, you get ready, you lift weights, you do things. You practice all the time. The same with prayer. We have to practice every day. And just like a sport, if we practice every day, we'll get better and better, and we'll also get more comfortable. So we'll be able to stop and say, I'll pray with you right now. Be ready at all times. Don't make your faith a private affair. It is time for all of us to go public.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm sure any of us would be glad to tell you more about our experience if you have any questions or want to ask us. One thing I did want to mention is we do have a little pamphlet here about the youth here at Trinity Church, and I've got some copies here on both sides of the altar railing if you're interested. If you know of anybody, any students from grades 6th through 12th grade, especially if they're currently in 5th grade, they can join as soon as they've successfully completed 5th grade, so they could join this summer. Please take one of these. It just has all kinds of information regarding, when we meet, that type of thing, and also has my contact information in it. So, please pass these around to folks that you know who have kids or who are students who would be interested in joining youth. We'd love to have them here and have them join us. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and we'll get on with communion.